For more on what's driving this shift in consumption, we have with us Yan Liang, Chair Professor in Economics at Willamette University. Good to see you again. Interesting topic.
Yeah, good to be with you, Sean.
So what exactly do we mean by emotional consumption in Chinese context? Because I think a lot of people look outside and look at China, especially the mainland, as an entity where people just go to work, they go home, they're able to deal with any kind of stress or overwork that comes their way, but they're human like everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially as income increases, people have more desires and demands. And I think this is a very unique phenomenon, but it's not, of course, only in China, but especially among the young people. I think they really prioritize purchases that give them the sense of belonging, recognition, and comfort and care. And so that's why you're seeing, all these trends going from Labubu, for example, right, as a embodiment, right, of emotions, but also to some experiential services, right, like cultural travels and cultural events, and also meditations, and also AI companionship. And so all of these, I seem to be the trend for not just young people, but mostly in the Gen Z, generation, where they really look out for these kinds of products, including goods and services.
I was in China earlier this year, and I noticed a lot of people, especially down near Forbidden City, they dress in period outfits, things that look back centuries and centuries and centuries. I'm curious about that, and I wonder how Mid-Autumn Festival, is it becoming a focal point for these kind of trends?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, happy Mid-Autumn Festival to you and all the viewers. So I think so. I think, people are very proud. Their historical and cultural legacy. And also, this is a way for them to kind of express, right, their respect and their love for the culture. And at the same time, I do think this is very interesting, right, that young people like to dress up, like to have the experiences, back in the history, and kind of have the taste of that kind of cultural and historical legacy. And so I think that is becoming more and more of a trend. And you see this not only in Beijing, of course, you see it in Xi'an, in some of the major cities, especially historical sites. And I think that's a very interesting and attractive thing for young people to do. And I think that, of course, adds to consumption, especially service consumption. And I think that's a great thing for these individuals, but also for the economy as well.
What about Gen Z? Let's talk a bit more about that group and how it's driving this consumption for mood or sentiment, because these are people who work very hard. They don't have the disposable income, if you will, that some of the older generation does with the money that it is getting. How is Gen Z coping?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think according to some of the survey, for example, the social platform Soul, which is basically a lot of Gen Z uses, and what they found is that, in fact, these kinds of emotional spending is very prominent in Gen Zs. 90% of the Gen Zs that are interviewed say that they do prioritize the purchases that give them emotional values. And also many of them spend about $155 a month on these kinds of spendings. And it's also very prominent for young people actually earning relatively low income, 5,000 yuan or lower. So it's quite interesting that there is this sort of the outlet for them to spend money to get comfort, to relieve their stress, and so on and so forth. So it's quite an interesting and I think quite widespread right now phenomenon among Gen Zs.
I'm curious what kind of meaningful gifts, or are they just more gifts because of the emotional signaling that people are purchasing or looking into now?
Well, I think, it's very interesting that this is growing really fast. And you have from very traditional cultural products and, to the new kind of the toys that we talked about, Labubu, but also, from the past, people practice yoga, Pilates, and meditations, to now, you have the visual escapes and also, visual graphic classes and also AIs. So I think it's very interesting. It's an emerging industry, and of course, we cannot not mention pets, right? So I think all of these are growing industries in China, where it really provides emotional value for consumers and provide additional, experiences. And I think, travel, for example, this, Golden Week, we have seen so much travel, in terms of passenger trips and also consumer spending. The retails have gone up by 3.3% in the first 4 days of the holiday compared to last year. So I think all of this suggests that there is a new trend that both the young people and, relatively older ones, they really appreciate the kinds of expenditures that would bring them happiness, right? The so-called joy economy or experience economy. And I think that is really growing.